It's the 4th week of July and it's time for part 2 of our garden update. The tomatoes, the shade cloth seems to be working on a couple of the plants, not so much on a couple of others. Interestingly, the plants that are starting to set on at the top are the ones that are in the middle of the shade cloth. So the ones on the end, it didn't seem to help. I don't know exactly why, but just throwing that out there. And I'm going to be pulling a couple of tomato plants out soon that don't have any tomatoes at the top. I figure if they haven't got tomatoes on them by August, there isn't much point in keeping the plant out there just for a few maybe tomatoes. But that trellis back there between the tomato rows has done really well, picked a lot of cucumbers. The tomatillos, they're bushing out in all directions, and I'm going to be pruning some on the back side there soon. It's just taking up too much space. And then this poor little banana tree, that's one of the pink bananas. I stepped on it once, and then Tanya stepped on it again, and it's still just kind of hanging in there. This tomato in the straw bale here, I picked a lot of tomatoes off of it. For a hybrid, it's not too bad, but it's got spider mites real bad. I sprayed, but doesn't seem to have helped, and I'm going to be keeping a close eye on it. I may take it out soon. And we've also got some sweet potatoes down below that bale. So petunias in the side of that bale. This bale's done really well with the eggplants. These are Ichabod too. Harvested a lot of eggplants. Then I pruned it a lot, and as you can see, it's really responded well with the blooms coming on. The foliage is looking good, and we're going to be getting some nice late eggplants off of this bale. And here's that black pearl ornamental pepper. Got the really pretty foliage and lots of those little peppers on. It's done extremely well. Then I harvested one of the grow bags with the potatoes. One grow bag did very poorly and one did pretty good, so I'm not sure. I'll be posting that probably tomorrow or the next day. I'm not sure. I'll make up my mind later. Sorry about that. But anyway, tomatoes back there are getting a few tomatoes on. It's a jungle back there. I've got some pruning to do. Let me get back there where I can show you what's going on a few things. That cucumber trellis back on the fence has done pretty well. It's produced a lot of cucumbers, but it's starting to get an aphid problem, so I'm going to have to deal with that soon. And this Mountain Magic's getting a few later tomatoes to set on. The chocolate pears got quite a few setting on. And then this other Ava purple ball plant back here, I need to trim it quite a bit. Then right below me here, this pepper, the Courbaki, it's starting to produce pretty well. And I have another little pepper plant. I'm not sure what it is still. Hasn't produced any peppers. Then the Chinese 5-color. As you can see, it's got lots of peppers on it. And looks like most of them are still in the purple stage, except for that first one that set on, and it's starting to get a little cream color. Then this albino bullnose, as you can see, it's producing, and we picked some yesterday. The Buena Mulata, they're a pretty pepper. It's a hot pepper. It's getting quite a few peppers on it. Then another Courbaki at the end. and I just accidentally topped this plant. Oops. Some pepper plants are like that. If you bend them too much, they'll just snap off. And that's what I did here. And the yacon over here is doing better than the other plants on the other side of the garden. It may be benefiting from the shade over here, I'm not sure. On the zinnias, I just have a couple of plants left that I'm interested in. I pulled out the others, and what I did was replanted some seeds. I planted some seeds right here that you're looking at now. They're coming up, and they're from this plant. And I planted those from one of these flowers that the bees pollinated. Then, from one that I pollinated, I used the seeds over here and planted. None of those are coming up yet. I'm going to try to get a second generation. And here's a look at another one of the zinnias that I'm trying to hand pollinate. I'm hoping to do a video on how I do that later when I get around to it. Here's a look at one of the bigger onions. Like I mentioned, we use those as we need them. So we've harvested some and we're just letting a few get bigger. This is the sweet potato jungle down here. The Okinawa purple, it's in a grow bag under this mess somewhere. And then the yellow jersey is in a grow bag under that side of this jungle somewhere. Then we have our canna flowers are starting to bloom. There's an orange one there. And a yellow one over there. And the cotton, let me get over there and try to. It's starting to flower. And I don't know if I can see any. Interestingly, it has, yeah, there's a difference there. Some days it's easier to see, but they get some white flowers and some red flowers on the same plant. Why that is, I don't know. And this one's finally starting to produce some cotton bolls. So we'll get a look at some of that Florida green cotton soon. And last year I grew the red foliated, which is a white cotton, but the Florida green actually has darker red foliation than the red foliated, which is kind of odd. And while I'm here, right below me is another one of our little pink banana trees, and this one's doing pretty well because it hasn't been stepped on a couple of times. And when the weather cools off, I'm going to do some chop and drop back here. It's a jungle. Here's a look at one of the darker Velvet Queen sunflowers. And then straight above me, I measured that and it's over 12 feet long. I've got a painter's extension pole and it extends to 12 feet and it's taller than that pole will reach. And these flowers really draw in the pollinators. And here's a look at the banana tree. It's almost as tall as I am now. And these leaves are just massive. I'm gonna have to measure one of these days, but there's my elbow there on that side, my fingertips on the other side. So it's pretty wide and very long. It's quite a bit longer than my arm. But it's doing very well now. And these pups down here at the bottom, they're well over knee high. They grow at a much faster rate than the mother plant did at the same size. Of course, they're benefiting from that massive root system. But they're even getting some decent sized leaves, and I just now noticed we have a new one started down there, so that's 4 pups we got growing on this one. I don't know how tall it'll get, but I'm happy with it so far. The ground cherries produce like crazy. As I mentioned before, I have this in about a 5-gallon container. It should be in at least twice that big, in my opinion. There's a onion in a pot, petunia on the tomato. It's just kind of there, taking up space. I put this goji berry over here on this table to get it up off the ground, but it's still loaded with berries. And I tasted one the other day, and they're not that great tasting. They're pretty bitter, but they're superfood, so that's what I read. So I guess mix a few of those up in a smoothie or something. It might add some pretty good nutrition to your diet. There's another ornamental pepper there. Some petunias here and there, hibiscus, purple shamrock. Then we still have a few of those little pink banana trees in some of the containers here and there. I've noticed just from watching how they grow in different containers in different locations, those little pink bananas seem to benefit from shade. They don't do as well if they're in full sunlight all day. They might do better once they're larger, but when they're small, they kind of get burnt pretty easy, or that's been my experience. The Rose of Sharon's really blooming well. Like I did last year, I pruned the bush back quite a bit, and it always responds with putting out a lot of new growth, and the new growth has these little flower buds on it. And the timing of these is great if you like to watch hummingbirds, because in our area they seem to get in full bloom about the time the hummingbirds are starting to migrate south. So we get a lot that come through here. Saw one this morning just going from flower to flower. Of course, it investigates and uses some of the other flowers like the zinnias and the petunias, but they seem to prefer the Rose of Sharon in our area anyway. And when they're migrating, we get them, the month of August is usually a big month for us, and sometimes into September, depending on the weather. We had one hang around one year that we were starting to worry that it was going to freeze to death, but they finally figured it out and moved south. The petunias in the wash tub, you can't see the wash tub anymore. Getting harder to weed eat around it. But if you have flowers and you notice them having these little half circles cut out of them, that's caused by leaf cutter bees, and they seem to be having a very good year because we're getting a lot of flower damage from them. Red hibiscus are really doing well this year. Some of these Japanese morning glories are starting to bloom a little bit. They're pretty. There's one bee trying to pollinate the flowers. We have some regular ones over there too. And then these variegated ones that I kind of use for ground cover, they also have some pretty flowers on them. Look at those. Well, that's our garden tour for the 4th week in July. If you're just now finding this channel and you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Otherwise, like, comment, and share. We'll see you next time.